We've all been there. Someone questions us. Maybe it's at work when a colleague asks why we made a certain decision, or at home when a family member challenges our choices. And what do? We start talking. And then we keep talking, we pile on details, we stack up justifications, we throw every reason we can think of onto the table, hoping that if we explain enough, the other person will finally nod in agreement and back down. But here's the problem. The more we explain, the weaker we sound. We think we're building credibility, when in reality we're giving away. Think about it. When someone is truly confident in their position, do they rush to prove it with a flood of words? Not usually. Confidence often comes across in simplicity. A calm, clear statement carries more authority than a 5-minute monologue of defenses. Over-explaining tells the other person, I don't trust my own words to stand on their own. And the moment we project doubt, we hand over control. Here's an example. Imagine your boss asks, why did you choose this approach for the project? If you immediately launch into a lengthy speech, covering every single step, every possible justification you've just told them without meaning to, that you feel you need their approval to validate your choice. But if instead you calmly say, because this approach saves us time and resources, and then stop, you're showing that you trust your own judgment. You're open to further conversation, but you're not bending over backwards to earn acceptance. That pause, that space you leave, is where the power sits. Over-explaining is often rooted in fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being disliked, fear of conflict. So we keep talking in the hope that more words will protect us. But what actually happens is the opposite. The more words we use, the more room we give others to pick apart, question, and control the direction of the conversation. It's like handing them more ammunition. What if you trusted your words to be enough? What if you believed that a simple, clear answer can stand without all the extras? That doesn't mean you're rude. It doesn't mean you shut people down. It means you communicate with precision instead of panic. It means you answer with clarity instead of clutter. And here's the real truth. Most people don't need the novel you're trying to hand them. They're not actually looking for every single justification. They just want to know if you're grounded. They want to know if you believe in what you're saying. If you do, they'll feel it. And if you don't, no amount of extra words will convince them otherwise. So, the next time you feel yourself rushing to over-explain, stop, breathe, give your words space to land. Because control in a conversation doesn't live in the length of your answer. It lives in your ability to trust that your answer is enough. We all have that one person who knows exactly how to get under our skin. Maybe it's a coworker who throws out sarcastic remarks in meetings, a relative who always questions your choices at family gatherings, or even a friend who disguises criticism as just joking. And here's the thing, they don't even have to be right. The moment you react, they've won. They've taken control of the conversation, not because their words are powerful, but because you gave them your power by taking the bait. Taking the bait looks different for everyone. Sometimes it's raising your voice. Sometimes it's firing back with a defensive explanation. Sometimes it's rolling your eyes or showing irritation. But the outcome is always the same. You shift from directing the conversation to reacting to theirs. And when you're in reaction mode, you're no longer in control. You've let them decide the pace, the tone, and even the outcome. Let me paint a picture. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone says, well, if you actually understood the numbers, you might have chosen differently. Instantly, you feel the heat rise. You want to prove them wrong, maybe throw in your own jab, maybe pull out every fact you know to show you're not incompetent. But in that moment, who's controlling the direction? Not you. They set the trap and your emotional reaction walked right into it. Now imagine the same scenario, but instead of reacting, you pause, you take a breath, you look at them and calmly say, I hear your concern. Let's look at the numbers together. Suddenly, the tension flips. You didn't ignore them, you didn't take the insult personally, and you didn't fuel the fire. You redirected the focus back to the actual issue. And here's the key, when you refuse the bait, you maintain control of yourself and by extension, the conversation. Here's the truth most people forget. Bait only works if you bite. If you don't, the other person is left holding an empty hook. And that's frustrating for them because their goal wasn't always about the issue, it was about pulling you off balance. When you stay grounded, you show them and everyone watching that you can't be steered so easily. That kind of presence speaks louder than any comeback ever could. It's not about silence every time, it's about choice. You choose when to engage, how to respond, and whether their comment deserves oxygen. When you stop reacting to every jab, you regain the ability to respond with intention. That doesn't just keep the conversation in your hands, it also shows strength that people can feel. So, the next time someone dangles bait in front of you, remember this, you don't have to bite. You can acknowledge without absorbing, respond without reacting, and redirect without losing yourself. And when you do, you'll notice something powerful. The conversation no longer controls you, you control it. One of the sneakiest ways we give away control in conversations is by chasing validation. It doesn't always look obvious. Sometimes it's as simple as adding, "Do you know what I mean?" at the end of every point you make. Sometimes it's repeating yourself until the other person nods, or watching their face for approval before you feel comfortable finishing your thought. And other times, it's agreeing with something you don't even believe in, just to avoid disapproval. On the surface, it feels harmless, even polite. But underneath, what you're really doing is handing over your sense of worth to the other person's reaction. Think about it. If you're constantly measuring your words by whether someone else claps for them, who's really in control? Not you. You've made the other person the judge and jury of your confidence. And the truth is, most of the time, they're not even aware you're waiting for their stamp of approval, which means you've chained yourself to a door they're not even holding. Imagine this: you're in a group discussion, and you make a suggestion. Immediately, your eyes flick around the room. You search for smiles, nod, some kind of sign that what you said landed well. And if you don't see it, you shrink back, maybe soften your voice, maybe even say, "Well, that's just my opinion." In that moment, you've told the room that you don't fully believe in your own contribution. And here's the catch: if you don't believe in it, why should anyone else? Now flip the scenario. You make the same suggestion, but this time you let it stand. You don't chase the nods. You don't tack on disclaimers. You trust that your words have weight simply because they came from you. That doesn't mean you're arrogant. It doesn't mean you're unwilling to be challenged. It means you're not waiting for someone else to tell you it's safe to believe in yourself. And that quiet confidence, that steadiness, has a way of earning respect far more than desperate approval seeking ever could. Chasing validation is exhausting. It keeps you on edge because you're always scanning for signs. Do they like me? Do they agree? Am I good enough in their eyes? And when you're locked in that cycle, you're not truly present in the conversation. You're performing. You're trying to win a reaction instead of sharing a perspective. And that's how you lose control. Not because anyone took it from you, but because you outsourced it. Here's the shift: validation is not oxygen. You don't need it to breathe. You can accept it when it comes, you can appreciate it when it's offered, but you don't need to chase it to survive. The moment you stop seeking it, you step into a stronger position. You're no longer handing your confidence to someone else to manage. You own it. And when you own it, the control of the conversation and of yourself stays right where it belongs, with you. Most of us are deeply uncomfortable with silence. The pause between sentences feels like empty space we need to rush in and fill. We think if we don't respond immediately, we'll look unsure, or worse, like we don't know what we're talking about. So we keep talking, stacking words on top of words, not because they're needed, but because silence feels unbearable. And yet, that very silence we're afraid of is one of the most powerful tools we have to hold control in a conversation. Silence unsettles people who expect you to react quickly. When someone challenges you, argues with you, or even tries to pressure you into agreeing, the pause makes them wonder what you're thinking. It shifts the dynamic. Suddenly, they're the ones waiting on you, not the other way around. That moment of stillness gives you the upper hand, not because you've said more, but because you've chosen not to rush. Picture a negotiation: one side makes an offer, the other side stays quiet. Seconds pass, and suddenly those seconds feel heavy. The first side begins to talk again, often sweetening the deal or backtracking slightly just to fill the space. Why? Because silence feels like resistance. It feels like strength, and the person who can sit in it comfortably often walks away with more control. But it's not just about negotiations. Think about everyday conversations. Imagine someone throws a passive-aggressive remark at you. Wow, must be nice to leave early again. Your instinct might be to defend yourself, to justify why you're leaving. But what if you just smiled, nodded, and said nothing? The silence takes the oxygen out of their comment. Without your reaction to fuel it, the remark dies in midair. That's the quiet power of not giving every word thrown at you an equal response. Silence also protects you from saying things you'll regret. How many times have you blurted out something in the heat of the moment, only to replay it later wishing you'd handled it differently? A pause, even just a deep breath, creates a gap between stimulus and response. In that gap, you get to choose. Do I respond? Do I let it go? Do I reframe it? That choice is where your control lies. And here's the beautiful part. Silence doesn't mean weakness. It doesn't mean you've lost your voice. It means you've chosen not to waste it. Words are most powerful when they're measured, not when they're endless. The pause gives weight to what comes next. People lean in when you don't immediately rush to fill the air, because they sense that whatever you're about to say matters. So the next time you feel pressure to explain, to answer instantly, to react in the moment, don't. Try the pause. Let silence do some of the work for you. Because often, the strongest thing you can say in a conversation is nothing at all. Every conversation carries energy. Sometimes it's calm and respectful. Other times it's tense, defensive, even confrontational. And here's the mistake most of us make. We match whatever energy we're given. If someone raises their voice, we raise ours. If someone gets sarcastic, we fire sarcasm back. If someone gets defensive, we double down. Without even realizing it, we've let their energy set the rules. And once that happens, the other person is in control. Redirecting energy is about refusing to play that game. Instead of absorbing whatever is thrown at you, you ground yourself and choose where to take the conversation. This isn't about pretending negative energy doesn't exist. It's about refusing to let it dictate your response. Because when you mirror chaos, you become part of it. But when you stay steady, you create the chance to shift the entire tone. Think about an argument you've seen spiral out of control. One person snaps, the other snaps louder, and within minutes, both are saying things they don't even mean. Nobody's listening, nobody's solving anything. That's what happens when energy keeps bouncing back and forth unchecked. But imagine if, instead, one person lowered their voice, slowed their pace, and kept their tone calm. Almost immediately, the room feels different. The energy changes because one person chose not to mirror but to redirect. Here's a simple example. Someone says to you, "You never listen to me." Most people instinctively react defensively. "That's not true. I always listen." And suddenly the conversation becomes a fight over who listens more. But if you redirect the energy, you might respond with, "It sounds like you don't feel heard. Tell me more about that." Instead of battling over the accusation, you've shifted the focus back to the real issue. The energy that was about to explode has now been redirected into something constructive. It's the same in professional settings. Picture a client who's frustrated and unloading complaints. If you match their frustration, the conversation escalates. But if you keep your voice calm and your words measured, "I hear your frustration. Let's break this down and see how we can fix it." You're not only protecting your own control, you're also guiding them toward a solution. That's the power of choosing your own energy instead of letting theirs dictate yours. Redirecting doesn't mean avoiding conflict or pretending everything is fine. It means staying intentional. It means asking yourself, do I want to fuel this energy or do I want to change it? Because every time you redirect, you remind the other person and yourself that you decide how you show up. At the end of the day, you can't always control what someone else brings into a conversation. You can't control their mood, their tone, or their words, but you can control whether you feed into it or redirect it. And the moment you stop letting their energy hijack yours, you stop giving away control. One of the most overlooked ways we give away control in conversations is by forgetting where our boundaries are, or worse, by acting like we don't have any. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out, they're lines that define what you will and will not allow. And here's the truth, if you don't know your boundaries, someone else will draw them for you. The moment that happens, the conversation no longer belongs to you. Think about how often we agree to things just to keep the peace. Maybe you say yes when every part of you wanted to say no. Maybe you keep listening even though the conversation turned disrespectful 10 minutes ago. Maybe you stay silent while someone crosses a line because you don't want to make things uncomfortable. On the surface, it looks like you're being easygoing or cooperative. But underneath, you've just handed away your control. Boundaries are not about pushing people away. They're about protecting your energy so you can stay present without resentment. Let's take an example. Imagine a coworker who constantly interrupts you. If you let it slide every time, you're teaching them that your voice is optional. But the moment you calmly say, "Hold on, let me finish my point," you've drawn a boundary, not with anger, not with hostility, but with clarity. And clarity is where control lies. The fear many people have is that setting boundaries will make them seem rude, difficult, or unkind. But the opposite is true. Clear boundaries actually make conversations healthier because they create a framework of respect. People don't have to guess where you stand, they know. And when others know your limits, they're less likely to push past them. There's also a deeper layer here. Boundaries aren't just about what you tell others, they're about what you tell yourself. If you stay in a conversation that drains you, or you allow someone to speak to you in a way that diminishes you, you're silently telling yourself that your comfort doesn't matter. Over time, that chips away at your confidence. But every time you honor your boundaries, you reinforce your own value. You remind yourself, I am allowed to take up space. I'm allowed to decide how I am treated. That mindset alone shifts the balance of power in any conversation. Of course, boundaries don't have to be dramatic. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, I can't continue this conversation right now, let's revisit it later. Sometimes it's choosing not to engage with gossip. Sometimes it's deciding you won't explain yourself beyond a single clear answer. Each of those choices communicates strength without a single extra word. At the end of the day, boundaries are not about controlling others, they're about controlling yourself. They're about deciding what you will allow into your space, your time, and your energy. When you own your boundaries, you don't have to fight for control in conversations. You already have it. We've walked through 6 subtle ways we give away control in conversations: over-explaining, taking the bait, chasing validation, fearing silence, matching the wrong energy, and forgetting our boundaries. And here's the truth that ties them all together. Control is not something other people steal from us. It's something we hand over, often without realizing it. The good news, that also means we can take it back, not by being louder, not by being harsher, not by trying to win every debate, but by standing firm in ourselves, by trusting that our words are enough, by refusing to react to every hook, by no longer waiting for someone else's approval before we feel confident, by letting silence work for us instead of against us, by guiding the energy instead of feeding it, and by owning the boundaries that protect our voice and our values. Control in a conversation doesn't come from overpowering the other person. It comes from not abandoning yourself in the process. And when you stop giving away that control, something incredible happens. You don't just change the way people listen to you. You change the way you listen to yourself. So the next time you find yourself in a conversation that feels like it's slipping away, remember this: control is never out there. It's always here, and how you choose to respond, protect it, use it wisely, and watch how differently people begin to respond to you.